Welcome to The Moms I Know with Sheila Walsh-Denton and Maria Elaine Anderson-Farner. Two moms on a mission to reclaim childhood and take you from surviving to thriving on your parenting journey.
Hi, this is Sheila.
And this is Maria.
And we want to welcome you to
The Moms I Know.
All right. Today we're going to be talking about relationships. And as always, we'd like to start out with a quote. Each contact with a human being is so rare, so precious, one should preserve it.
Anais Nin. I love that quote. And today, as we talk about relationships, we want to focus on that preciousness of the relationships. So we're talking about relationships in the broader context. So this could be the relationship between a husband and wife. It could be a relationship between the two wives, the two fathers, the grandparents, the intergenerational community. When it comes to raising a family, we're really looking at all of the relationships that come into play as we are raising our beautiful children. And so if you're a single parent, it's going to be who are the extended community that you're dealing with. This concept of it truly does take a village to raise a child. And that may be cliche, but it is so true.
Mm-hmm. And I think our point today is to really talk about ways to cultivate these relationships. And it is so important to take the time to slow down and to pay attention with intention. You know, I mean, I think that's a really good parenting tip too. You know, I get it confused, but paying attention with intention.
Yes,
yeah.
I love that. We were chuckling last time as we were wrapping up that we sound like we have all the answers or that we know what we're talking about every single time. And we wanted to just let you know, we're real moms here. We've got to get real.
Yeah.
And we understand that parenting is messy, it's challenging, and we've been through it.
Yes.
And so that's why we're here to offer you that support, those suggestions. We don't have all the answers, but we have lots of experience, and we've worked with many, many families over the years. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping it real and looking at those types of things that come up and come in, get in the way on a daily basis. And we were talking before we started recording today about our own relationships and the challenges that we've been through with our significant others. And also when we look at the aunts, the uncles, the grandparents, the friends, the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs, the mother-in-laws. So, and so this whole idea that our children have their parents, and then they also have all of these other people that interact with them. And so this idea of cultivating those relationships, of really taking the time to treasure each one and to put in the energy and the time and the commitment there. And we talk a lot about time, and so many of us, we're rushing so fast these days. The pace of life has quickened so much over the past several decades. And so the thing that we're really struggling with is time. But it's one of the most important things that we can give ourselves and that we can give our children, that we can give our relationships, is that time to really treasure it. So whether it's with our significant other or our mother-in-law or with a sibling or however we're working at this, we're wanting you to really stop and think about that. And so I love that idea of paying attention with intention. It's so important.
Yeah. And maybe, I always like to think about things of making a list of where in your life, what relationships need some cultivating, which relationships in your life right now need some attention. And, maybe you have 3 people that you can write on that list, for example. And then within the next week, possibly picking up the phone, making a date, and whether it's a phone date or a in-person date. But, even doing that with your children, right? I mean, as we're talking about, that's another great parenting tool, is making dates with your kids.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love that idea. And that's keeping it real. Mm-hmm. Pick those 3 that you can reach out to this week. I'm looking at the long list of people that I want to connect with and that I want to go have tea with, or that I want to have that long phone conversation with, or the long walk with. And we're busy. We don't always have the time to do that, but pick 3. Years ago, I had written a written letter to somebody in the program that I was working with. And she called me later and she says, I got a handwritten letter from you. I couldn't believe that. And so, sometimes we overlook some of the simplest things.
That is such a big thing. And I have a friend, her name's Jessica Rios, and she has the moms I know, she has a business called Leaning into Light. And one of the major tenet of it is handwriting letters. Mm-hmm. And so she actually teaches workshops of how to hand write letters, nice. Because it is so meaningful. When was the last time you got a handwritten letter?
Right. Yeah. And we're losing the art of that handwriting. I was doing some writing for my book that will be coming in the future. I was talking about when we would get letters as children, and especially if there was somebody that was abroad, and we would get these little tissue paper thin envelopes, and every little corner of it was covered with writing. And now, we're losing some of those things because we've got emails and we've got texts and we've got, all of the Facebook ways of keeping in touch, which can be very helpful, and they also take away from some of the things that we've been taking for granted over the decades. And so whether it's writing that note or making that phone call or reaching out to ask somebody if they can get together for a cup of tea or a walk, and then with the significant person in your life that's helping with that, that you're raising that child with, making sure that you have that time together. It's okay to hire a babysitter or to ask somebody for a favor, to do trades if hiring a babysitter isn't in your budget, and to take that time to spend time together, not just to nurture that relationship, but also to be talking about the parenting issues that are coming up, and how do we want to be looking at these types of things. If an issue is coming up with schooling or with sleep or with nutrition, whatever it is, that you take that time as parents away from the children to have those conversations, because it's so important for parents to be on the same page. And a lot of times we don't take the time to have those conversations when our children aren't present. I don't know how many times I've worked with families where they're talking about the children in front of the children, and that's not going to be as productive as having that time separately, where you really are coming to an agreement about how you want to address something, and then you come back a unified team or caregivers or whoever it is that you're working with, and you're on the same page. And the children can sense that. They also know when you're not on the same page. And I can't tell you how many times in our family life it was like, well, mom said this, well, dad said that. And so it's important to nurture that relationship.
Yeah, you said a lot of good things just then. And one thing I just want to, from my own experience, I remember when, so my first two children are 18 months apart, and it was overwhelming. Brent was working like 2 jobs, and I was full-time stay-at-home mom, and just total overwhelm. Life was very full. Mm-hmm. And I started to have like a body breakdown because I was lacking in self-care. I was lacking in balance. And so what I had to do in our relationship was totally in lack. Mm-hmm. It was survival. And so I had I was struggling. Mm-hmm. And it's like, and who did I reach out to? I had my girlfriends, I talked with them, but there was a piece also that I didn't really necessarily always want to share because it was ugly, mm-hmm. it was vulnerable. And the piece is that I actually thought something, I had like brain stuff going on. I went and had a brain MRI, and it was, everything's fine. But at that point when he said everything's fine, I was like, I have to make a difference. And I did hire a babysitter. I hired a babysitter for 10 hours a week. And that allowed me to start a yoga practice, right? And also it allowed Brent and I to have date nights. Mm-hmm. And that saved our marriage. And could we afford it? No. There are places that we pulled from so that we could. You have to pay attention with the intention. It was really making a conscious choice of saying, you know what, if we're going to make this family work, we need to work on us. Mm-hmm. And that's been a recurring theme throughout our relationship. It's like, okay, I think those date nights lasted for 3-4 years or whatever. And I know people who are still do it, like every Wednesday night, margaritas, or like they have those things. And I wish we could do that, but with 3 kids, it's full and schedules change. And so we don't have that set date, but we have periods of it. Mm-hmm. And now we're able to sometimes even get a night away together, which we never used to do.
Mm-hmm. And when you said, can we afford it? Probably not, but we can't afford not to do it either. And so when I talk with young families and they say, well, we can't afford a babysitter, I say, well, can you talk to other families who also can't afford a babysitter? And you trade. You do what works. You find another mom who wants to have that time. You find another dad. you find grandparents, aunts, uncles, you just ask for help. It's okay to ask for help. And the time that you put in nurturing those relationships early on is going to pay off in the long run. Because if we're not taking care of ourselves, that goes back to, this premise of self-care that's so important as parents. If we don't take care of ourselves, then we pay in different ways. We pay with body breakdown. We pay with the relationship falling apart. Fighting, and which affects the children. And, the children pick up on absolutely everything. So what we're really talking about is putting in the work ahead of time so that you're taking care of yourself, that you're taking care of your relationships with your entire community that is helping with the raising of the children, that you're putting in that front loading. We talk about the foundation of parenting. We talk about really strengthening that so that you have it for the long run, because parenting, it's the long haul. It's not that it's going to be something that you can burn the candle at both ends for a few years and then you're going to be through. This is the most important thing you can be doing in life, is raising this next generation. And so we want to make sure that we are looking at all of the factors that go into this so that we can raise a generation of children that is vibrant, that is resilient, that is coming from a place of fullness, that these children know how to work through their own challenges as they watch their parents work through theirs. And so nobody said this was going to be easy. It can be very fun. It can be incredibly rewarding. And those relationships really, really matter.
Yeah. And we have to model. We are their model relationship of how you show up, whether you are in a relationship or even your relationships with others, with relationships with the community. How are you interacting with the person at the store? How are you interacting with the person, the telemarketer that keeps calling you? How are you interacting, right, with your mother-in-law or father-in-law? Are you being respectful? And these are things that you need to, as moms, really check in and do an assessment, when something's not feeling right.
Oh, that's such a good point. Our children are watching absolutely everything that we do. And when you said that about the telemarketer, it's like, okay, note to self, right?
And
we've been
there. Not perfect. I mean, I've hung up on them, and then I saw my daughter hang up on them, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Right. So we have to be aware that they are watching every single thing that we do. They're watching. And in the years when there was a lot of struggle in our family, our children saw the struggle. And they were aware of it, and they also saw us work through those struggles. And as much as I wish that I could say that there were no struggles and that we had this just, picture perfect family life all the way through, that's not the reality. It was difficult at many, many times with all kinds of things that came up. And so one thing that they saw was their imperfect parents working through an imperfect relationship, but striving for harmony and always coming back saying, this relationship is worth it. This family is worth it. Our children are our most important, these precious beings that we want to make sure that we are present for, and that being together. And that's not to say that all relationships are going to stay together. And sometimes in extenuating circumstances, maybe the best thing is for that to change and to go into a different direction. But the way in which we continue to interact when those types of situations occur is even more important, because our children then are going through additional stress and watching every single move that we make, and how we interact in those deeper times of struggle is more telling, I think, than anything, especially when everything's going right and we've got the time and the space. It's easy to be in a place of patience and forgiveness and having that time to listen to everything our children want to tell us, and being able to explain to them why we've made a decision and how we've come to that decision and why we're following through and having boundaries. But when things get tough, then we need to have those reserves, and we need to be modeling that for our kids ever so much more so. And we were talking about different authors that we've read over the years who talk about how important those relationships, the couples relationships are, and how important it is for us to try to work through the challenges, because there's always going to be challenges in life. And we want to make sure that we are doing our own interpersonal work in the relationship that we're in. And like I said earlier, sometimes that may not be the healthiest thing, is to stay in that relationship. So we're not advocating staying in an unhealthy relationship, but we're also saying, what is the work that, I have to do individually in this relationship, that if I leave this one, I'm going to take to another one. And so again, it comes back to that intentional living, where we're looking at our own strengths and weaknesses, our partner's strengths and weaknesses, and how can we nurture this together.
Yeah, it's a choice every day. You have to choose every day, I feel like, to show up in the loving. When things get really difficult, it's how are you practicing love today? How are you showing up in your love? And it's like, you can do that with action. You can do it with thoughts, with words, with being gentle on yourself. And I wanted to tell a story is, we're in a full moon period right now, and it's a very strong full moon, and it has created a lot of feelings and a lot of just situations that have been really difficult for myself and my husband to navigate. And we kind of got in it the last few days of just not seeing the eye to eye. And yesterday we were downtown and we went for a walk, and it was early morning, and we were sitting just on the curb, and we were just bummed. And it was interesting is that a homeless man walks by, and he asked us for a smoke, and we did not have one, but he said, "You guys look really bummed." and we just looked at each other, and we were just like, "Yeah, we are." And I said, "We're fighting." And he says, "You shouldn't fight." And in that moment, it was just Brett and I kind of looked at each other. We got up and we took a moment. We probably walked half a block, and then we held hands. And we realized that it was, like we needed to move that energy. And it was that the piece of, I still choose you. I still choose you. As much grief as you caused me, like just the stress, and a lot of it's my stuff, a lot of it's his stuff, and I can't change him. He can't change me. We can only change our own self, right? But it was just a moment of somebody who I would probably have never asked for feedback, but he was able to say it as he saw it. And I don't want to show up like that in the world. I don't want to show up being bummed. I want to show up in joy. And that's what your relationship should bring you. It should bring you joy, right? And so then Brent, and then we were fine. It's like we shook it off, and we both chose what's the easier path. Because sometimes we think that the easier path is the path of resistance. We think we have to hurt, we have to struggle, it has to be painful. When in actuality, if you can look at it the other, have that shift, you can say, what would it look like if I chose to smile more? What it would look like if I chose to see how good things are today, or how good he is. How has he shown up today, just for me today? Because he shows up for me every single day. And sometimes it's my choice whether I see it. And they are able to receive it as well. Right?
Oh, my goodness. Great story.
Yeah.
Yeah. And blessings to that homeless man.
I know. He didn't realize that, if he didn't say anything, we probably would have just still stayed in our muck.
Divine intervention. Yeah. So I love that though, because you said, how are we showing up in our loving? How are we choosing every day to show up? And it is a choice every single day. And there were mornings when my children were young where I had to dig down deep to dredge up that last bit of patience and love and caring. And then there were moments when the joy was right there on the surface from the very beginning. But every day it was a choice, and to be there for the children and to model for them and to show them a loving way. And so I love that, showing up in the loving. I think that's a perfect statement for the way in which we work with our relationships with all of the people in our lives, and our children every single day when they smile and they hug us and they give us those kisses, that warms our hearts and gives us that strength and that courage and that fortitude to carry on. And we do what needs to be done for the children, and thank goodness, because then they fill us up and life becomes this circle, the dance that we've talked about before, and we can continue on and find the joy in every moment. Oh, thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, no, it's,
Yeah.
there's a book, The Loving Diet by Jessica Flanagan, and it's something that has resonated with me. And, maybe we should interview her because she's a mom I know, and her story is a powerful, powerful story about love and loss, and then coming back, realizing that her heart broke open for her to love more.
Oh,
and that's the loving diet. But
yes.
her actual breakdown was in her marriage,
Mm-hmm.
and then and that's what she came with, is the loving diet. Yeah,
Nice.
it's really
Well,
beautiful.
We can choose love every single day. Sometimes it's easy,
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard, but it's so important. And it's exciting to think about all of the people that we're going to be bringing on, that we're going to be talking about all the different aspects of parenting that are going to be coming. So
yeah,
we just wish you all the best today. And till next time, go out there and be loving.
Thanks for joining us today for the Moms I Know. To learn more about Sheila and her online program, The Mom Map, visit purplebeetnutrition.com. To learn more about Maria and her group programs and retreats, visit SoquelEssentials.com. That's SOQUEL Essentials.com. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of The Moms I Know. Until next week, have a joyful family journey.